Joe Biden has strongly suggested Vladimir Putin's involvement in the apparent death of Yevgeny Prigozhin in a plane crash, as Ukrainian officials interpreted the incident as a warning to Russian elites, and flowers were laid for the late Wagner chief outside the organization's St. Petersburg headquarters. "I don't know for a fact what happened, but I'm not surprised," the U.S. president said after a briefing after the crash of Prigozhin's private jet between Moscow and St. Petersburg. "There's not much that happens in Russia that Putin's not behind. But I don't know enough to know the answer." Rosaviatsia, the Russian aviation authority, said Prigozhin and senior Wagner commander Dmitry Utkin were among 10 people traveling on an Embraer business jet that crashed on Wednesday evening. The cause of the crash was not immediately clear, but Prigozhin's long-standing feud with the military and the armed uprising he led in June would give the Russian state ample motive for revenge. Ukrainian presidential aide Mikhailo Podolyak said the plane crash on Wednesday evening, exactly 2 months after Wagner forces marched on Moscow, was a signal from Putin to Russia's elites ahead of the 2024 elections. "Beware, disloyalty equals death," Yevgeny Prigozhin and crash site. Yevgeny Prigozhin. A death that will leave a lasting mark on Russian army and elite. Read more. Those sentiments were echoed by Russian journalist Ksenia Sobchak, whose father Putin once described as his mentor. "Absolutely clear signal to all the elites, in fact, to everyone who had any seditious thoughts," she said on Telegram. The Kremlin has not yet commented on the crash. Rosaviatsia, the Russian aviation authority, said Prigozhin and senior Wagner commander Dmitry Utkin were among 10 people traveling on the Embraer business jet at the time. Putin himself made no mention of the incident during a speech in Moscow to mark the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Battle of Kursk during the Second World War. He instead hailed all our soldiers who are fighting bravely and resolutely in Ukraine. On the ground in Russia, a building housing Wagner's offices in St. Petersburg lit up its windows on Wednesday in such a way as to display a giant cross in a mark of respect and mourning. Flowers were left and candles lit near the offices early on Thursday. The future role of Wagner, which once played a prominent role in the war in Ukraine and is active in Africa, remains unclear. Abbas Galyamov, a former Putin speechwriter turned critic, said, "The establishment is now convinced that it will not be possible to oppose Putin." Putin is strong enough and capable of revenge. Bill Browder, a businessman with years of experience in Russia and another Kremlin critic, agreed. Putin never forgives and never forgets. He looked like a humiliated weakling with Prigozhin running around without a care in the world, after the mutiny. This will cement his authority. Ukrainian ministerial advisor Anton Gerashenko suggested Wagner mercenaries may seek revenge against Putin and Russia's military establishment, with whom Prigozhin clashed repeatedly, and implied on social media that other paramilitary leaders linked to Putin may feel at risk, including a picture of Ramzan Kadyrov, the strongman head of Chechnya whose forces have been fighting in Ukraine. Sviatlana Tikhanovskaya, the exiled leader of the opposition of Belarus, where some Wagner fighters moved after their short-lived mutiny in Russia, said Prigozhin would not be missed in her country. He was a murderer and should be remembered as such, she said. Prigozhin's apparent demise coincided with the removal of one of the Wagner founders' key allies in the Russian military, Gen. Sergei Surovikin. The commander was rumored to have been put under house arrest, interrogated, or even put in the notorious Lefortovo prison. His whereabouts have not been confirmed publicly. High is the highest-level sacking yet of a military commander after Yevgeny Prigozhin's abortive mutiny in June. Polish Foreign Minister Zbigniew Rau on state news channel TVP Info. We would have great trouble naming anyone who would intuitively think this was a coincidence. It so happens that political opponents whom Vladimir Putin considers a threat to his power do not die naturally. Kaja Kallas, Prime Minister of Estonia, to CNN. If true, it shows Putin will eliminate opponents and that scares anyone who is thinking of expressing opinion different than his. British MP Alicia Kearns, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, tweeted, "The speed at which the Russian government has confirmed Yevgeny Prigozhin was on a plane that crashed on a flight from Moscow to St. Petersburg should tell us everything we need to know." Reports Russian air defense shot down the plane suggests Putin is sending a very loud message. For Putin there is one unforgivable sin, the betrayal of Putin and Russia. He hunts down those he perceives to be traitors, including, on British shores, such as Alexander Litvinenko and Sergei Skripal. Now Yevgeny Prigozhin has been added to that list, ending Putin's humiliation. Pavel Luzin, an expert with U.S. think tank the Center for European Policy Analysis, said that regardless of whether Putin ordered the plane's destruction, this event demonstrates that the Russian elite is not united, that the contradictions within the Kremlin are growing, that the coordination between different branches within the Russian leadership is really bad. In the end, if Vladimir Putin is so powerful, why didn't he arrest Prigozhin? Russia's investigative committee, which probes serious crimes, said it opened an investigation into the crash, as has the civil aviation authority Rosaviatsia. The plane showed no sign of a problem until a precipitous drop in its final 30 seconds, according to flight tracking data. The Brazilian Embraer Legacy 600 model of executive jet that crashed has only recorded one accident in over 20 years of service, according to website International Aviation HQ, and it was not due to mechanical failure. A 2008 Brazilian Air Force report blamed 2 U.S. pilots, traffic controllers and faulty communications for a mid-air collision, while a lawyer for the pilots said individual air traffic controllers and flaws in Brazil's air traffic control system caused the accident. Embraer said it has complied with international sanctions imposed on Russia and had not provided maintenance for the aircraft since 2019.